When my dad took his life, he was at his most lonely.
That sounds terrifying because then people say, oh, that's me. And then what the brain often goes to is there's no hope. There's no way to fix it. I'm not alone in it, but yet I am alone.
Most men, as you have mentioned, have, a yard full of shallow graves.
They might, the mights and the what ifs. That's what kills us.
I cannot solve somebody else's emotional problems. I can't even solve somebody else's financial problems. What I can do is create enough safety that their suffering turns into something that they're willing to do something about.
So it's a chemical signal that says, I am loved and safe when I'm with you. Therefore, I will relax in your presence, and you encourage my nervous system to be calmer. Do you ever wonder if the stress level in your life and in your relationships is normal or if it's damaging you? If you are like most people, you feel like you have to get stressed to zero or something bad's going to happen. Or you spend a lot of time focusing on what ifs and then they never actually take place and you've wasted that time and that effort. I brought Dr. Chris Lee on the show today to show you, number one, what levels of stress are normal inside your system. And number two, what you should be doing about that stress that's going to run counter to everything you've ever heard before. Dr. Chris, welcome to the show. Dr. Chris, it is great to talk with you. And one thing in particular that I wanted to talk with you today, I can't have this conversation with most other people because everybody is so wrapped into their emotions today, right? Your feelings are your reality. What you feel is so important. We need to stop everything right now and have those feelings. Everything should grind to a halt, and we need to talk about the emotions we're having. You don't teach that, which is quite wonderful. I saw a reel recently on Instagram where you said if something needs to get done, then sometimes you need to turn everything off and get that thing done. But there's a responsible way of managing the shutdown and the turn down, and I'd love to talk with you about that. What is the correct relationship to feelings that people should be having?
You nailed it out of the gate, Adam. By the way, thanks for having me on here. Big fan. So feelings are not facts, right? That's a great way to kind of intro how to deal with our feelings. One of the biggest problems that I think we are running into, especially in this modern world, is that when the feelings come up, we don't recognize that it takes us into a completely different world. So when we get emotional, it turns us into a bit of a dysfunctional gorilla is kind of what I tell my clients. It starts to turn off areas of the brain that help you do long-term thinking, and it tries to alleviate the problem instantaneously, immediately, and as fast as possible. And that creates a huge problem if you are trying to create long-term sustainability or, invest into retirement or have sustainable relationships. So one of the practices that I use myself, and one thing that I teach for a lot of folks, is that when those feelings start to come up, and it's not a great time to let yourself have those feelings, because if you don't listen to the whispers, you get the screams. If you don't allow yourself to process and integrate those emotions, and we can talk about what that means too, it's not that they just magically go away. They never go away. They get hidden and mixed into behaviors. So what I teach my clients to do is to annotate and recognize where's the person, place, and circumstance that this feeling came up, and then ask a very simple question, what is this reminding me of? And then tuck that emotion away for 12 hours or less until you can actually take intentional time to do something with it. Because if you don't, number one, it's going to stop a lot of the momentum that, as I know you and I can probably appreciate, takes a minute to get into, to being productive, to get into the flow of the day, to start to have some of these conversations. Once you get that momentum gone, it's hard to get it back, or you kind of have to start over, or at least that's how our brain frames time. So disconnect from that, recognize that it is real, and then schedule and create predictable time for you to do something with it later.
Are you saying that we should be scheduling our feelings?
I personally strongly believe in scheduling your feelings, scheduling date night, anything that's important. Show me that it's important to you by putting it in the schedule.
The brain definitely does a lot better when we understand there is time coming for that, because if you just shove it down the rabbit hole and try to pretend you don't have an emotion, that's going to destroy you. I try to tell my clients that your emotions are sensory data. They're there for a reason. They're supposed to inform you of something. If you got into somebody's car and the dashboard was completely blacked out with duct tape And you asked, why is that? Why is your dashboard completely blacked out, sir? And the driver said, well, the warning lights wouldn't stop screaming at me, so I've simply blocked them all out. You're getting out of that car as fast as you humanly can. So if men in particular are blocking out their emotions and their sensory data, you're creating a deep sense of unsafety for the other people who are, so to speak, in your car, in your life. So blocking them out doesn't work. Scheduling them is going to work for your brain because you'll be able to deal with them at an appropriate time. I like that.
The brain hates uncertainty. It hates uncertainty more than just about anything else. So your brain evolved, adapted to be the way that it is in this modern world, with all the folds and all of the abilities that different sections have to control uncertainty, to try to manage it, to try to predict, to try to learn. And I think oftentimes when we start to talk about the nervous system and we start to talk about all of these different things, it's very easy to get away from like that core principle that all of these things, your brain is a mini making machine trying to predict what to anticipate next. It's the primary reason for dopamine. Serotonin is a bonding molecule, the same way that oxytocin is, all trying to understand where we can invest time, energy, and effort towards things that are important. If you aren't labeling the things that are important, the stress mechanisms in your brain will build up an index of avoidance and name avoidance as important instead. And then we live these lives of mediocrity, and no one deserves that.
I want to come back to the brain chemicals because that's an awesome conversation that we need to have
Take me
immediately.
there.
And at the same time, I want to say this. The majority of my clients that I work with, and likely yours as well, they are spending about 90% of their daily energy preparing for things that never happen and will never happen because the amygdala is hallucinating. I read some research recently that your amygdala hallucinates up to 340% more if you have insecure attachment. So your fear center is sparking off 340% additional hallucinations of things that will never happen. So everybody listening, if you spend a lot of time in the shower, on the toilet, in your bed, tossing and turning and thinking about all those conversations you're afraid are going to happen and how people are going to abandon you, and then you plan for it, that's where the majority of your energy is going. Would you say that, Chris?
Couldn't agree anymore. Yeah. So this is where I've heard you say this quote, letters to Seneca or letters from Seneca, right? We suffer more in imagination than we do in reality. And how true that is in this modern world now more than ever. We are drowning in information, but thirsty for wisdom, but wisdom does not come for free. Now, when we break down the layers of that to understand why we are suffering so much in imagination, it's because the brain did not evolve in kittens and rainbows and comfort and hugs and kisses. It evolved in danger and survival and threat. And we are here today, not because we are the kindest, but because ancestrally we are the most reactive and we are the strongest and best at being reactive. Now, the modern day challenge is that we are creating behaviors and we are living in lives that we have a lot of responsibility that we could be taking that we are not. So this, induction of so much ADHD going around. And this is like, if there's ever a thing that I'm going to get canceled for, it's me saying that we are creating this pandemic of adult induced ADHD through scrolling, through porn. Like the research that comes out on porn and what that's doing to men and women's brains is horrific, especially young men. Like it's horrible. Like I could not think of a more perfect and packaged drug to deliver technologically than that thing. But like you had kind of mentioned, that sparking of the amygdala, what fires together wires together. It's called Hebb's law, right? So the more that we practice these behaviors, we need to understand that everything that we're doing on repetition, consistently, even if it's not good for us, is making that pathway easier to access tomorrow. So what you do today and the effort that you involve and invest is going to make those pathways easier over time, which is why I tell people, if you can master the art of consistency at a 1% interval per day, nothing can f with you. Nothing. You become the master of your ship. Like you start to understand how to steer. And there's the adage, all right, if I change 1 degree, right, in like 25 miles, how much further are you going to be from your original destination? And it's significant. So if you don't learn how to use time and manage your expectations and navigate those emotions, they will be managed and navigated probably by not only the fear and the stress that's induced through our own perception, but by others' agendas.
And we know that this can actually go very fast. I was talking to Dr. Caroline Leaf recently, and in her work, right, great
Love
conversation.
Karen. So she's extraordinary.
She is astoundingly brilliant. And in her work, she
Yes.
indicates that you have about 58 to 63 days to begin remapping neural pathways and changing them. So it can happen
Hmm.
fairly quickly for a pattern. But what
Hmm.
also people don't understand is that you have to have about 40 repetitions inside that cycle to really activate that change. You can't do one
Yeah.
thing every 6 months and hope that it's going to change your neural pathways. It's got to be 40 touch points.
Without a doubt. And this is that point where I know myself well enough to say the research tells us that the small consistent changes are what's going to produce a change. And I know myself well enough that if I don't like cold turkey and like go all in on a season of change, that like it's harder for me to do 1% at this point in my life than it is to make like large change. But there is a reason for that. And it's because I have the skill level at this point to manage that amount of change. So I am making a transition right now from lifting very heavy in the gym to getting back into doing like athletic conditioning and training, which after putting on like 25 pounds of muscle over the past like 18 months is a real son of a bitch to start like running and doing burpees down the street. But I'm setting these goals knowing that my nervous system likes to have a daily goal that's going to build on a weekly agenda based on a long-term schedule that's going to hit me to the destination that I want to be at come May of 2026. And my nervous system thrives in things like that. Like a good life is good years, good months, good weeks, good days, good moments. That's kind of how I build goals. That's kind of how I build my businesses. That's how I live life.
You are doing the opposite of what most people are doing today, which is to lean into the discomfort. And I think that a lot
Oh, I
of
love it.
men, right, and a lot of men would do that, I think, if they understood that that was how men are supposed to be operating and functioning. That's our core duty and that's our core responsibility as in our species. A lot of men, I think, are taught to run away from it because we're raised by single moms who say, if you get a scrape on the playground, you're almost dead. Like, let me take care of you. Or you're just simply taught to regulate yourself alone with nobody self-regulating. So even fear looks like death itself to you for most people too. So where did you start learning how to lean into the discomfort as a man in that way? What taught you?
So I, for the most part, was raised by a single mom, my mom, who is extraordinary and exceptional and had the very simple rules like many parents do with millennial kids, which is outside until the streetlights are on. When the streetlights are on, there is dinner on the counter. If you're not at the dinner table, you're not eating. So you're at the dinner table and you're eating. But at a very early age, hard work was just built in, right? Like we grew up in the country, so like we're doing chores and we're like kind of going in through and grinding that. But the real lesson comes when you kind of go out on your own and there is no one holding you accountable. And what you do in secret shows up in how you perform in public, right? Like, again, one of my favorite quotes that are out there. And it shows up, right? If you're not eating healthy, if you're not going to the gym, if you're not taking care of yourself, or the one that I get asked a lot or that I see most consistently is people that treat their partners really well in public. But it shows up because it's so foreign to that relationship that when it is there, one partner or the other is like so used to the abuse and neglect that they like almost have this like emotional or intellectual like flinch away when that kindness is going to come in. So the relationship that I started to learn and develop came to me when I was 22 and had a season of life. It sucked. I'm just going to like cut it to you. It was brutal. Hit by a car riding my bike when I was trying to finish a doctorate. Lost my dad to suicide 2 weeks later. Who's my best friend? Me and my brother were supposed to go get a barbecue with him. Suicide in men is a whole conversation that I'm more than happy to go into. But that wrecked me, to say the very least. And then about a year after that, I had my daughter unexpectedly, greatest thing of my entire life. She's in the living room doing homeschool right now. And that was that switch for me. All of that. And it was because during school, this was the period of time where we're starting to get really into the neurology of things and really start to understand. And there's this quote that my neurobiology professor put on the board. If a flower doesn't bloom, you don't blame the flower. It's all about the environment. And I started to understand that the most ideal circumstances for a plant, right, aren't perfect and ideal circumstances. to make a strong and resilient plant. It needs stress, right? If anybody has ever tried to grow a fiddle leaf fig inside, you gotta jostle the leaves to make it have enough stress in order to build up resistance so it grows up straight. We need that healthy allotropic stress. We need healthy stressors in our lives. We need to recognize that the stress that we invest at the gym, hard conversations, vulnerability, doing the hard thing when the easy thing is available, all of that use goes across behavioral patterns. So when you go to the gym, when you don't want to, it's the same thing, and it's firing very similar pathways as I don't want to have this conversation with my partner because I don't want to take responsibility for a thing that I did wrong. And all of those things start to translate. But as you'd mentioned, it's so easy to avoid. It's so easy to seek simple pleasures. It's so easy to, I don't even know where my phone is right now, but to scroll your life away, right? That's my favorite thing. When I don't know my phone is, I know I'm having a good day, to lean into real discussions, to have depth in conversation, but also recognize that you don't have to have depth all the time. That can also be its own pattern of trying to find meaning and significance outside of yourself. So for me, it was figuring out, okay, I'm young, I'm 23, I got this kid, I got another 18 months before I'm out of school. What am I going to do? Am I going to let this shape me, or am I going to recognize that it is me forming myself? And I chose the latter. So I started to go into and figure out all of these behavioral patterns. Wasn't working out, wasn't really eating well, couldn't really afford anything. I'm stealing coffee from hotel lobbies, walking to school with my daughter strapped to my chest, a backpack on, and me and the hotel lobby person, we just had an understanding that he's yep, go, yep, do your thing. I would say hi. And then occasionally when I could, I would try to just have a conversation. So I wasn't a random stranger, but he got it. Right. But that's where I started to where I am today. I have a beautiful house down in Naples, Florida. My daughter is homeschooled and she's brilliant and smart and intelligent. All of those are a reflection of the effort and difficulty that I intentionally placed on myself. Right. There is a Jordan Peterson quote that you don't want to turn yourself into a monster reactively, but you want to know that you have the monster inside of you. Right. You want to be able to tame that thing. And some of those moments in masculinity, it's yeah, my daughter, my girlfriend, the people that are around me, they don't question their safety because it's innate to being in the house. Right. Because I show that there is nothing else setting the tone, the emotional environment, than me. And it doesn't mean that I don't have emotions or bad or hard or uncertainty or manage those things. I just choose to go into them intentionally, accept when I have done something wrong, and then choose to move forward and ask how I can do it differently next time.
I love this. And there's a trap that a lot of people fall into when they listen to the things that you just said, because they resonate with me. And I can say, yes, lean into the difficulties, lean into the hardship, lean into the pain. But a lot of people that listen to that say, okay, so I have to just white knuckle it, hate my life, be miserable, spark my nervous system, and drive into this as it kills me, and I'm having multiple panic attacks. And I think there's the false dichotomy we fall for is I'm either going to be miserable and white-knuckling it forever, or I'm going to not do it. Or I'm going to have to switch back and forth between terror and panic and flat on my face. And that is not true. That is absolutely not true. We have to balance out that stress, cortisol, etc. Our systems are meant to balance them, but also actually to become more resilient against them, right?
Yes. Yeah, without a doubt. So I'm doing a really awesome deep dive into the research and literature around cortisol right now because as the internet does, don't listen to things on the internet, do your own research. If there was one thing that I would love for more people to understand, it's how to read a research study. Because that's a whole ball of wax. But yes, so long-term cortisol, chronic cortisol exposure due to intrinsic, extrinsic stress, it doesn't really matter where it's coming from. The number that gets thrown around a lot is that 80% of stressors are things that you can't control outside of your ring, right? Control about the economy. And it's yes, the economy is doing weird and squirrely things. You have control over how you participate in it, but you're trying to control your perception of the thing. So we're going about it very backwards. So cortisol inside of the system starts to eat up in long-term exposure the white matter inside of the brain. These are your neural connections. These are the myelin sheath that are connecting neurons that are firing and wiring together. So when you have chronic stress, one of the primary areas that starts to go away is the frontal cortex, executive function, long-term thinking, willpower, ability to do the hard thing when the easy thing is available. On top of that, we start to recognize that that thing connects to the HTP axis, and that's where more cortisol is connected to, because that's what goes to your hormonal system. So all of these things flood and cascade in together. And when we are living our lives chased by the invisible bear, or the fear of yesterday, or the fear of tomorrow, or the depression that we don't know how to comprehend and understand, it really is a matter of us taking responsibility for our lives. I had some hard things happen to me. Adam, you've had hard things happen to you, right? And you've made an intentional choice to shape the experience of them on your terms, right? Not an easy thing to do.
No. One thing that has helped me immensely is understanding that humans are relational beings. We're not really meant to live in isolation. It's not one dude sitting there hunting the mammoth by himself, going back, doing everything alone. So many of our solutions are individualistic solutions of what can I do alone in my cave to try to build resilience against stress. And that's not what our hunter-gatherer ancestors evolved doing. That's not what our system is built for. We are relational beings. I'd love to share something with you that me and my business partner have been working on and we're deploying. It's an equation that we've built helping people understand what it looks like to build loyalty, for example, in a secure relationship. In a professional relationship, we call it secure loyalty. In a more personal relationship, we call it secure love. It's the same equation, weighted a little bit differently. I'd love to get your take on this. You open to that?
I'm ready. Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. I'd like to take a moment to talk to people who want to achieve a breakthrough in their relationships, but you've been frustrated because you just can't get there. Most people spend a long time learning, and they're training the wrong parts of your brain. You need to have experiences that actually change how you function. Your brain will only trust experiences. And that's why I'm going to be going beyond just teaching you, and at a special relationship intensive, showing you and helping you achieve that breakthrough for yourself. If you want experiences with me and with my team, having those breakthrough moments, those aha moments, those conversations that you've always been afraid to have, join us at this event happening at the end of April in 2026. There, I'm going to be showing you exactly how to build the biochemical properties in your body and in your brain that give you loyalty and connection and secure bonding. We're also going to be helping you achieve that breakthrough by showing you the exact skills you have always been missing. And finally, we're going to build you a plan for moving forward so that when you get home, you hit the ground running. Join us at this Relationship Mastery Intensive, but be warned, we are running out of tickets and seats are very limited. Make sure you check the link in the description or go to adamlanesmith.com to secure your spot now. So there's essentially 6 chemicals that we're balancing in here, and there's 3 components. One is attraction. So we need to be attracted, whether it's a professional piece, you want your employee attracted to you as an opportunity, you want your child attracted to you as an adult, you want your partner attracted to you, something that pulls them towards you. One of this components is oxytocin, right? We feel close together, a sense of belonging, that warmth and intimacy. With that comes GABA, right, of course, which suppresses cortisol. I'm saying that's not for your benefit. You know this probably better than I do, but as the audience needs to know. With GABA, it suppresses the cortisol and stress, so it's a chemical signal that says, I am loved and safe when I am with you, therefore I will relax in your presence, and you encourage my nervous system to be calmer. And then we have dopamine, which gets a bad rap, right? Dopamine is treated as if it's an evil drug. It's something wonderful. We treat it badly. We are the ones misusing it. So with the attraction piece, you add long-term commitment piece, vasopressin bonding hormones, right? A lot of research coming out on that. Dr. Sue Carter, had the privilege of speaking with her, I believe, last year, right? Fantastic. You and I move in the same circles. I love it. With vasopressin, it is loyalty. We are allies. We work well together. And when we are hurt or afraid, when there is cortisol, you make it better. And you definitely don't make it worse. Tied in then with rest and digest, parasympathetic nervous system, the release of serotonin in the commitment level as well. So serotonin, vasopressin, commitment, oxytocin, GABA, dopamine, attraction. And as you balance those 5 chemicals, they are divided across the bottom by cortisol. So the cortisol is endlessly eating away at them, so to speak, and dividing them. Now the target, you can never divide by zero, right? You don't want cortisol to drop to zero because it means you don't care. If you have cortisol with zero cortisol with your partner, that actually probably means you're a sociopath and you don't care if they leave, right? So you need to
I,
care.
like that's so important. Like, can you go a little bit further into that? Like, your partner's going to trigger you. Like, when you
Absolutely.
finally get somatic safety, like your shit's going to come up.
So I've been married for 17 years. We have 5 children. Number 6 is coming now. And I will
Nice.
say my wife and I have good stress together. She has needs. When she has a need and there's a problem, my cortisol absolutely does go up a little bit to take care of her. It needs to. That's what's in my system, and that's the purpose of
Yeah.
cortisol is Adam cares about his wife, amp up a little bit, take care of her in a better
Mobilize
way,
energy.
mobilize energy. Cortisol comes back down. We are properly balanced out by the top of the equation, and I'm not endlessly spiking. Now, if daily she's spiking me into danger territory with reckless behaviors, harmful behaviors, disregarding my needs, and then is hurting my attraction factor and hurting my commitment factor, my love or my loyalty biochemically is going to begin to diminish, and that can create what we call a cortisol association against the other person.
Yeah.
Now, in the professional setting, a lot of people are doing this as well, and they're actually creating too much cortisol for their employees, and they're just attracting, no commitment whatsoever. So whoever else is
Right.
more attractive, they pull your best employees away. Pausing for breath here. What are your thoughts on this so far, and especially the cortisol balance there?
So I love what you're talking about here. I I believe so deeply in our ability to create environments. The flower doesn't bloom, you don't blame the flower. There's inner environment and outer environment. So being able to understand the factors that draw people towards us, one fantastic and fascinating component of this is when we co-regulate, right? We have these mirror neurons inside of our brain. 40% of the brain's total mass, when we look at it, is like occipital lobe, which is looking at visual interpretation, right? And kids have very active mirror neurons that are firing, and they practice some of these behaviors. We have them as adults, right? They just don't show up in the same way they do as kids. But when it comes to the co-regulation factors, it is not a matter of who is the best, it's who's sending the strongest signal, which is dangerous if you don't understand it. So there are political leaders that send out exceptionally strong signals, which are wildly inaccurate. Well, they're just Dunning-Kruger is completely consuming, which means that somebody has a falsehood about the confidence for which they portray information, which is not accurate or correct, right? And that is plaguing, especially, I can speak openly here, the political system in the United States for which both of us live, if I'm understanding this correctly, not to sell us both out, but it's a challenge. However, it doesn't mean that you fall victim to that thing. When you fall victim to it, it controls you, and victims cannot be taught. I am a strong believer of that. And it is a lesson my daughter, who is 8, I consistently mirror that on the board, right? We have a whiteboard that lives in our living room. So there's quotes on that all the time. Teach a man to fish is the one that's on there right now.
Mm-hmm.
And she's starting to better understand the levels of this and where perception is creating this detachment. Now, we don't have control over perception when cortisol is elevated consistently, because perception and the ability to ask these questions is a function of parietal frontal cortex and our ability to drive focus. So it's the difference between being the director of the internal narrative and an actor in it. So when that cortisol is elevated for extended periods of time, and then that gets bound with serotonin, which is this connection molecule, right? We get this connection to a state, which is going to perpetually drive that thing forward. Do it a few times, and now dopamine, which is not the molecule of reward, it's the molecule of motivation, creates an anticipation for that elevated and stimulated state. The same thing that happens when people are taking, like, this is not a 1-to-1 ratio or not a 1-to-1 correlation, but methamphetamines has a very high stimulation, high elevated state. Not good for you. But we don't quite see that type of dichotomy pulling up. People aren't who are meth addicts or alcoholics is the most common one. I went into neuroscience. My brother went into addiction. Family reunions are horrible. They're great. We have a great conversation. But he's like, alcohol is the hardest thing because they know that they're consuming a this is the problem, socially acceptable substance. that they know is toxic, but they don't know it's toxic until it hits that critical mass where they start to have pain and suffering. Then they're a victim of their own pain and suffering. And then they go back and they switch back and forth off and on between, I need this thing to survive. And they're never uncomfortable enough to actually break the pattern. That said, like you had mentioned, we're not meant to do this alone. And like the loneliness that's going around on our planet, especially in the States right now, is crippling. People don't have social friends. People don't have social groups. It's horrific. I have a group of 5 individuals who are, I would say, I don't even know where this language came from. They're like my inner circle, right? 4 of them are men, right? Because like I need some masculine dude. My best friend is a chicken farmer. His name's Nate. He's out in South Carolina. My best dude. I talk to him 2-3 times a week. I wish it was more, but we get to have these very real conversations about how he and I perceive feelings, actions, business, relationships. I cannot have a one-to-one conversation that I would have with him with my partner who is a woman, right? Because how he and I talk about emotions as men are just different. And I think one of the crippling factors to this attraction and this beautifully, I don't even want to know how long this took you to put together. It is beautiful, right? I respect the fact that you put time and energy and effort into creating that and educating yourself. People don't do that anymore, right? As I'm sure you are keenly aware. But people put the pressure of a village on 1 or 2 people. And then those expectations are constantly not met. And then they are looking and punishing themselves for having too high of a standard. And then there's nobody also checking them in to say, well, do you have the network? Do you have the connections? Are you going out and seeking those things? You're putting all these pressures on this single person. They're not going to be able to be all the parts of the village at one time. So there's obviously multiple factors that go into this. But like you had mentioned, with all of these things, commitment is a requirement of a regulated nervous system expressing vulnerability, which is not going to happen at elevated cortisol levels. It's just not going to.
I love this discussion. And in particular, I want to highlight one thing. Most of my clients who come to me right now, I have actually a tremendous number of couples coming in and working with me. And I see a very strange mixture between men who hyper individuate and say, I have to do everything alone inside my own head. I have to get all my own brain chemicals and all my own neurotransmitters so that I can regulate my own cortisol silently. And they don't even think of doing it with their partner, which is where they use a lot of alcohol because it does 3 out of the 5 balancing chemicals, doesn't do oxytocin.
I was going to say, like,
right.
Hits all the boxes.
It does. And a lot of them, when they start hearing about oxytocin spray up the nose, they ask, can I just use that to build my oxytocin connections? And I say, exactly. That's the feeling of that would maybe meet your biochemical needs in a very short run.
Use porn for connection too.
Yeah, correct. But your brain knows the difference between I used nose spray and I have a deep, fulfilling, loving, intimate, trusting relationship with a human being.
But that's the thing. It's the effort. Effort is what binds those things together.
And confirmation that someone will be there, hunter-gatherer style. If something terrible happens, this person will be there to help me, to guide me through it, to regulate with me, even just to catch up with me afterward when we're patching up our wounds. They will be there. And you don't get that effect from a chemical, from a drug, from a video, from a spray up your nose. None of that will work. So that's where most men get stuck is, if I can't do it alone, then what other option do I have? Which, of course, is a terrifying question that a man even would think of because you're not supposed to do it alone. One thing that I do notice with a lot of the women that I work with, one of the biggest problems is that they hyperfixate into their partners. You talked about my partner will be everything for me and I will be everything for them. And it's sort of that pioneer mentality of we will live alone in a cabin on the frontier and we will have to be everything together. And that's their only option for survival. And a lot of women are hyperfixating into that. I did see an article recently where the female author said man-keeping is becoming a deadly problem and that women shouldn't be responsible for the men in their life. Yes. So it's the idea that the woman is hyperfixating into the man, but the man shouldn't be hyperfixating into her, and that taking care of his needs, I think that this is the combination of women hyperfixating, men individuating, so the woman feels responsible, right? We are meant to be relational beings. We can't be otherwise.
So I want to keep going down this, but I also want to, for your listeners, please pay attention to the way that Adam is narrating when he's talking about articles that he read. He is not passively consuming information. He is having a dialogue with the author. It took me a long time to figure out how to read. I thought you just passively, you read through the information, and really good authors will naturally or intentionally, I would say really good authors have this form of dialogue that will happen with the reader. In this modern world, whether you're consuming information on social media, on Instagram and TikTok, whatever the heck the thing is, or you're reading articles, have a discussion with it in your head. I'm doing this. My daughter has to read 3 chapter books a week, period, non-negotiable, right? Before we even consider the thought of me thrashing her in Mario Kart, right? That's a whole nother conversation, but Mario Kart is how we do chores here. But what we're going through right now is her developing that inner narrative that is curious and skeptical, but curiosity always leads. And I have recognized it just in the, I don't know how long we've been recording, and it doesn't matter. This is a fantastic and stimulating conversation. But every time you bring up an article, and I want your readers to just know you're taking the time, energy, and effort, and I recognize that, right? That you are not just passively reading, you are creating dialogue within yourself so that you can have original thought. That's how you form creativity, good in and good out, right? But it's not just this passive regurgitation. You're sitting. I would bank $1,000 that in some way, shape, or form, you're in a contemplation practice, whether it's meditation, prayer, journaling. You look like a guy who would journal and have as much of an expensive pen collection as I have, which me and my accountant can talk about later. But the recognition of that in your content and the way that I perceive it and the way that I read and listen to it, it's way more clear to me being a part of this conversation that you have intentionally designed how you are creating creativity in your life and not just having passive relationship with information, which is why I think wisdom is probably coming through you in such a way that it is.
I appreciate that. And thank you. I will say to the people who are listening, a lot of people have a hard time reading in that way because the information they take in, they either don't know what to do with it, they don't know what it means to them, or they actually feel scared and intimidated by it. Because a lot of times they'll read about the loneliness statistic of with millennials 45 and under, or 50 now and under, that they, at a rate of 2/3 of them feel lonely every single day, and 1/3 of them feel crushingly, depressingly lonely every single day. That's a massive epidemic that we can't even begin to encapsulate when we think about it. That sounds terrifying because then people say, oh, that's me. And then what the brain often goes to is there's no hope. There's no way to fix it. I'm not alone in it, but yet I am alone. I will always be this alone, and I am hopeless. And that's that relational aspect. We're meant to try to fix things with other people. There's the problem. We aren't attaching properly to other people. That's why I fixate on attachment is we can't even begin the relationship structures that would allow us to do relational opportunities to then fix the problem. So our brain says there is no hope because I don't have a relationship for that.
When my dad took his life, he was at his most lonely. And I can look back at those patterns. We both lived in Atlanta at the time. And yes, going through a very difficult time, didn't have emotional skill, and definitely did not have a healthy community to go through that. And obviously, I have tried to find the answers to why my dad did that in my entire career. And I am not too humble to reflect on that and say, you never get the answers. If anybody has gone through a suicide and tried to find the answers, you can look, and I'm not trying to deter people away from doing that. But the answer is that type of closure. Same thing with a relationship. That closure is something you find inside yourself. When we reflect on the patterns, though, of men who do take their lives, there's a couple consistencies. One of them is always loneliness. They start to detach. And that's because I think there's this narrative that goes along that they don't want to be a burden. My feelings, my life, I think men want to talk about it. I really believe that. I've talked with enough men, and I imagine you have as well. And men are able to, and I don't want to speak for you, Adam, but men are able to talk to me because I believe that they have that co-regulation aspect where I'm totally okay talking about like a normal day for me, where even this morning we had a bunch of kids in our garage running around because I made an obstacle course with sandbags and stuff and all this other crap last night. So I got the neighborhood kids running around, but I left my car outside and it rained and I had my windows cracked. right? So it's like, oh my gosh. So I'm talking with somebody this morning and I'm like, yeah, well, I'm going through the uncertainty of like now trying to air out my car, right? For which like is a bear, right? And I'm like, I got super frustrated this morning. So instead of like a normal 2 cups of coffee, I waited until I was having this podcast with you to have a cup of coffee because I know myself well enough that I'm at this level. And if I would have done it, then I would have started to project and I would have started to do this and I would have started to do that. And I'm talking to my friend and he's like, man, yeah, I totally get that. Our natural conversation, because we reciprocate vulnerability when available and necessary, is an environment where connection is the standard. It's the baseline. If there's not something that is, and we're not trying to evoke it. Not like I saw this leaf fall on my foot and like just reminded me of the most beautiful sunset I'd ever seen when I was 12 years old. And it's not that, right? Like I think we sometimes go down that spiritual pathway unnecessarily, but especially with this hyper individualism, as you're talking about, the pain of being alone and the feelings of loneliness that start to come, we dissipate them so easily in this society that loneliness is a driver for you to go out and go connect. But it's faster, easier, simpler, more pleasurable to bust out your phone and scroll away. So much easier than when I feel lonely and I want to go have a relationship to open up whatever pornography website that you're going to use and get that artificial connection. All of the things that would drive us to connect and have community are now easily accessible in that little black box of doom. And that's creating so many of these downhill effects.
I really love 2 things that you just said, and I want to pull them out so that people really resonate with them. Number one is you said, I'm dealing with the uncertainty of knowing how my car is, instead of saying, my car might be destroyed, right? So many times we hallucinate and say, catastrophizing, my car could be wrecked.
Yeah, I got to total the car.
Right.
Yeah.
I got to total the car. My girlfriend could be mad at me. My boyfriend might be abandoning me. My wife might be angry at me today. My husband might leave me. Right. They might. The mights and the what ifs. That's what kills us. That is exactly what begins to kill us because those hallucinations are there. I love that you name it and say, I am dealing with the uncertainty of a situation. It could go either way right now. Right. It's Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah.
All over again. It could be wrecked. It could be fine. It could be just a little smelly. Dealing with the uncertainty is a great reframe that I encourage people to use. And number 2, I love that you said it to a male friend because you told a male friend, I'm experiencing a challenge. This is what I'm doing about that challenge. And that he was able to receive you oxytocin, vasopressin, GABA, serotonin, right? Dopamine, all balanced against the cortisol of the experience that you are having. It wasn't you just sitting alone in your garage, rocking back and forth, white-knuckling it, looking at your car, saying, what if, and then pulling out your phone and doom scrolling like you had said. It was you resonating and regulating with another human being.
And that's it. So friends let friends suffer in safety. I strongly believe that. So deeply I believe that. So when I'm connecting with my friend, he says, how's your Monday morning? I'm like, dude, my car. He's like, what's going on? I'm like, we do Sunday night dinners, which is a lost art. Pot roast last night, crushed it, by the way. So everybody eats and then we go watch the sunset and the kids are running around and all this other stuff. And I'm having this conversation and discussing it with him. And he's like, oh my gosh, well, what are we going to do about it? So he's helping me take the burden of that. And he's not saying, here's the fix, here's the solution. He is putting the stress and the pressure back on me to find the solution because he knows that I can, right? So he's helping me go through this process. And then the question always comes up, how do I find people like this? Be that person. Be the person. Be the person that doesn't give solutions. Be the person that holds space enough for that person to figure it out. I cannot solve somebody else's emotional problems. I can't even solve somebody else's financial problems. What I can do is create enough safety that their suffering turns into something that they're willing to do something about. There's no other way to go do that, right? Community, connection, the entire protocol that you outlined here is exactly for that. And if we can get back to our ability to do that, the communities that we establish, they become so resilient.
I think that this is a big area where a lot of my male clients, but men in general, struggle when they have a woman in their life that they love. And men get a bad rap today that they don't care about women, but I think men care very deeply about women. And in particular, one complaint I hear a lot from women is my husband always wants to jump to fixing it. When I tell him that I'm upset and I vent to him, he wants to fix it. And I tell them bluntly, that's a sign that he actually cares about you and loves you, but also that he has no idea what emotions are or how to process
100%.
it. Right. So
Men have three emotions: happy, horny, and hungry. Right? Like with
if that,
tapped.
it's all rolled into one. Actually, most
For
of the
sure,
time,
all at the same time. Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
And what I then tell women is, number one, appreciate that part of him while we can fix it and change it. And then I talk to the man and I say, look, there are 2 steps to the thing that you're trying to do, and you're skipping step 1 and going to step 2. Her logical brain right now, because she's having an emotional experience, her logical brain is actually disengaged, the prefrontal cortex and all of this. So she's having an emotional experience in the more emotional areas of her brain. She's not coming to you saying, rescue me. She's coming to you saying, help me feel better in the emotional areas of my brain so that they recede and pull back, restoring my logical functioning, and I can solve it myself later. This is what I need from you, is the regulation piece. The sad part is most men have very rarely, if ever, been co-regulated as a human being from childhood on up. They were left to do it mostly on their own. So then it's an alien experience to try to co-regulate with a wife. When I tell men break it into 2 steps, always assume that the first step is to bring the emotions down and then talk logic, or ask her first. All of a sudden, the marriage thrives. All of a sudden, she recognizes his love and care for her.
Yeah, relationship rules 101. One of you gets feelings at a time. Doesn't mean that your feelings are not important, but one person gets feelings at a time. So if your partner, your person, your husband, your wife, I don't care, if they're expressing feelings, all you do is just feedback and listen. But like when you hear them, you listen to them. You shut up. You put the phone down. Like I said, I don't even know where my phone is. Upside down, backwards, inside out, throw it outside, and you sit and you connect. Right? Like I had the shittiest day ever, and you go, awesome. Like, can I make a cup of tea? Like we have tea at my house at 5 o'clock every day. Right? And we sit and we talk and we discuss, right? Because like I got a daughter and I got a girlfriend, and like I'm surrounded by women, right? So like, great. They kind of need like a regulation standpoint. So I build in habits, routines, and schedules that allow them for expression. So arguments don't really happen here. Expression does. And I am a brick shit house of saying, man, that I totally get. That sounds really frustrating. That sounds so hard. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that does sound like a hell of a day. Goodness gracious. It's not like, oh, okay. So, all right. Verizon called and they said that they're going up on your bill. Okay. Let's just call them. Let's just go. Okay. Yeah, no, we got this. It's like, damn. Yeah. And now that's probably going to be even more time. Right. So I'm helping, at least for myself, right? I can only speak for myself to this degree. If you're not helping validate the emotion and you're trying to fix it for them, your partner's not going to develop emotional intelligence. They're going to develop emotional reactivity, because every time you come to them or they try to come to you for emotional safety, there is no emotional safety. There is emotional scarcity, trying to fix something that doesn't need a logical solution right now. There is a time for solution, but it is after safety.
And I love this conversation about emotional safety. Can we go there next?
Take me there. Yeah, let's
Absolutely.
go. And this is a huge problem. Psychological safety is different for everybody. Like everybody has a different flavor of ice cream. Psychological safety, depending on that person's trauma and experience and life and all the other things, looks different. And I think this is one of those discomfort conversations. Ask your partner, hey, when was the last time that you felt not only like physically safe with me, but like when's the last time you felt emotionally safe with me?
Your life won't change until your attachment style does. New Year, New Me lets you build your own bundle and save more the more that you add. 15%, 20%, 30%, all the way up to 40% off. And if you want direct help, coaching packages are discounted up to 20%. But the biggest transformation happens at my Relationship Mastery Intensive. Early bird seats are nearly filled. If you want in, now's the time. And for the men out there who are listening to this, a lot of men are uncomfortable with the concept of safety. Men don't like to sit there and say, I need to feel safe. I need to feel safe. That sounds effeminate to us. The concept of safety is built into our nervous system, but we tend to resonate better with the word peace, right? I am at peace. I feel at peace with you. I feel
consistent
at home
security is what we call it.
Security, consistency, peace. All of these resonate usually better with men, but it means the same thing. So the concept for men out here, if you're trying to understand how to make a woman feel safe, what would help you feel at peace might be what helps her feel safe, but there's different aspects of it, right? Emotional safety is non-negotiable in a relationship. I tend to say that there's two parts of the emotional safety equation. One is, am I safe to have emotions with you in your presence?
Yeah.
Am I safe to bring my concerns to you? If you're in business,
Mm-hmm.
am I safe to knock on your door, walk in and tell you I'm concerned about a problem over there? And you will say, talk to me about what's happening. Let's fix it together, instead of screaming at me, yelling at me for bothering you, or that there's a
Yeah.
problem, or running away.
Mm-hmm.
Am I safe to have emotions in your presence? Will you take them seriously? Number one. And
Yeah.
number two, am I safe from your emotions? Not that you don't have them, but are you dysregulated by them, so that when I knock on your door, I say, sir, there's a problem. Can I talk to you about it? You welcome me in, and then start screaming at me because something has set you off halfway through. You need to be regulated. And this is where I love your work, right? You need to deal with things and manage them, but you also have to put your own feelings in perspective and properly come back and fix them. You can't bury everything in the yard and have a field of shallow graves of emotions out in your backyard and never resolve them. You must
Yeah.
resolve them, right? When you do that, you create emotional safety for them to come to you, and emotional safety with you. And this is an aspect of leadership. It's basic self-regulation and co-regulation with a friend, with a partner, with a child, an employee. If we are not self-regulating, we cannot co-regulate. It begins with self-regulation.
Without a doubt, right? And there's a million aspects to this, but I think most men, as you have mentioned, have, a yard full of shallow graves of like swept under the rug, or I got to go do this, or I need to go do that. So when it comes to emotional safety, I think a huge part of that is recognizing exactly what you said. I'm going to start my emotional journey today. And I don't even know what that looks like for most men, because most men have never seen it. They've never recognized it. And like, I'm not saying that you need to go to these like retreats and like go do ayahuasca in Peru and like don't like the amount of men that contact me and they're like, I went and did this like psychoactive drug and like just destroyed me. And I'm like, okay, that's not it, right? You want emotional skill, and emotional skill comes from consistency. So just starting to recognize that, number one, the feelings that your partner is evoking inside of you, it's not their fault. They're not doing it to you. And I'm going to say this as somebody who teaches it, Adam, I would be super curious if you would agree. The more they trigger you and the more you do the work, the better the marriage and the relationship becomes, right?
So long as they are aware of it and regulating themselves as well. If you are both on
And
that
not doing
journey
it
of improvement, absolutely.
maliciously, right?
Right.
If you're like, oh my gosh, I hate carrots, and then you have carrot soup 4 times that week, it's like, oh, maybe there's a different way to go do that. But every time something comes up inside of me, right, which happens, right? Like Adam, 17 years you've been together with your wife?
17 years with my wife, yep.
Extraordinary. Does she still activate your nervous system at times?
If I am not regulated, if I'm having a terrible day with work, or if I'm exhausted, she can set me off if I'm not managing myself correctly.
Life happens, right? Not slept, kids, new one on the way, right? Life happens, period. You're not going to be like living a regulated life does not mean that you're sitting under the Bodhi tree and levitating everywhere you go. It's you're recognizing emotions, taking responsibility for them, finding time and place to deal with them accordingly. And then if necessary, and you're open to it, sharing them with your partner. And if that partner has the emotional intelligence to hold space for you and create, like there's a way to do it. And it's not just shove it underneath the rug. Like, the very simple way to process emotions is recognize where it came from. What does this remind me of? When's the first time that I remember having this experience? What is the memory attached onto this feeling? And then giving yourself permission to have a feeling in a different state from which it was created. Period. That's it.
I love this, and I love one of your Instagram reels that you did recently that I actually took to heart and did myself during a challenging experience in the last week. You had something on there about if you are having an emotional experience and you are having a challenge, you need to pause, you need to sit down, you need to write down what you are feeling, because it activates the logical left side linguistics area of the brain, which stimulates that, which is good. You need to write down what you are feeling and write down what it reminds you of, and then you need to pause for about 6 to 12 hours, let it breathe, get through your impulse period, allow your brain to fully catch up, your nervous system reset. And I teach my clients actively reset. Don't just sit there waiting for it to reset.
Don't.
Actively,
Yes.
diligently
We gotta
somatic
talk about
experience.
that. Yeah.
And then come back and deal with it. And I had that just in the last week. And I said, I'm going to be talking to Chris in a week anyway. I may as well put this into effort and see what it does. And it was quite wonderful. It was a wonderful practice. So thank you for that. But writing it down, plus going through how what it reminds you of, that is an excellent procedure, because you see that I am responding to a stimulus. I'm responding to a pre-programmed response that my amygdala has said, this was dangerous 8 years ago, and now it is going to here's back to hurt me again. And then you go through it and you realize, no, this is not the same. And that is not going to hurt me. Even a regulated person has those moments built into them. Even a person with secure attachment has those moments built in. It's not about, do we never, ever get activated? It's when we do we handle it responsibly?
I know what to do with that.
We know what to do with it.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, it is. I can be an absolute monster, right? And like, there's younger versions of me that like probably like were not the greatest human being ever, right? As I'm like trying to figure out who I am and what the frog to do with all this stuff inside my body and these feelings. And the difference today is, number one, I recognize them. I don't project. I don't deflect. They're mine and they're safe. One of the big turning points in my life was when I really hated myself for a minute. Really hated myself, thought that I was a worthless piece of crap, thought that I was just going to be like such a horrible dad to my daughter. And I struggled so much with it. And a huge turning point was recognizing that I could create, and I had created through consistency, the ability for me to be safe enough to hate myself. And I didn't hate myself after that. Like when I finally could let that version of me, I'm a big fan of parts work. IFS, internal family systems, has been really beneficial for me in giving myself permission. And that version of me that had this narrative, state determines story, determines strategy. It's a great business tactic. It's an amazing strategy for us to live through a regulated nervous system. It's a great way to invest into the economy if those are things. State, story, strategy. And it is not a circle, or excuse me, it's not a line, it's a circle, right? And being able to determine, this story is coming from this strategy, which came from this state. Lovely. Now I've kind of got some operational tools. And like you mentioned, active reset and active regulation, when you get activated, like I've got an assault bike in my garage. I've got a 100-pound sandbag out there. Like, you're mad, you got big feelings, and you're used to like projecting them and like telling it to your kids. Awesome. Go lift that sandbag 50 times and then tell me how you feel. Burn the cortisol through your muscles so it doesn't go to your brain, which is not how it works. But in theory, no matter what, it still works. Like, nobody's doing jump squats for 2 minutes and coming back in and not a different person, right? Like, I got thunder thighs from regulating my nervous system from frustrations and scaling businesses and like negotiations and mergers, but I am in control of how they get processed. They're not processing through my life and my day.
I love this aspect for two reasons. One, I had a coaching client actually who came into one of our sessions crying at the beginning and said, I just saw my ex-girlfriend on my way home. I can't stand myself right now. He was dysregulated, sobbing. Adam, I don't even know if I should meet with you. I said, no, we should meet. So I set all of the skill training and all of the communications and everything aside and said, you are going to drop and do push-ups until you can't, and then you're going to get up and do jumping jacks until you can't. And you're going to do it again and again and again. And he did this for about 10 minutes. By the end of that 10 minutes, he was laughing at himself that he had been so overwhelmed by his emotions before, where 10 minutes prior, he'd been sobbing his eyes out saying, I don't think I can even go on one more day. It was that level of
And if he wouldn't have done that, the narrative, the story, the hypervigilance, the overthinking, the everything would have taken over the next 2, 3, 4 days of week of his life.
The decisions he would have made, calling her, getting back with her, probably sleeping with her, sleeping with someone else, right? Having a destructive pattern of behaviors, drugs, alcohol, anything could have spiraled in. Instead, 10 minutes of exercise felt tremendously better. The other thing that I love that you said that I really want to highlight as well, and you've said a lot of good things, so thank you. Thank you for this conversation. One thing you said in there was your pathway out of your self-loathing and negative self-image. It wasn't just self-love. It wasn't affirmations in the mirror. It wasn't I am a unicorn of love and desire. It was growing respect for yourself. I think that the switch between self-love, I feel gross even saying that phrase, and self-respect which is what you built. I think that's the real definitive change. That's the experience. Can you talk to me about that?
Self-love and self-respect has been an interesting journey because my daughter's name is Phoenix, and yes, little young, little hippie, little whatever, but every time that I say her name, which is very often, it is a nice reminder that it is okay to burn down and restart. It's okay to restart conversations. It's okay to have cycles in life. So one of those cycles of burning down happened when my dad passed away, and I have no model for masculinity anymore because I can love my dad and still not respect the decisions that he made, right? The same way that I tell my daughter, I love you unconditionally. There is nothing that you will do that will stop me from loving you. I do not accept of all the things that you do, and there's consequences to your actions, period. Right? Now, I will stand in the fire with you of those things up until a certain point where you get to take responsibility to be an adult and be an individual, which is why I am a huge proponent of homeschooling for our system and strategy, because I'm taking responsibility for that education, which is, again, its whole thing. For me, the affirmations and things like that, my system needs evidence way more than it needs affirmations. So what I would tell myself is, I will respect myself when. And what you'll start to recognize is that there is the I'll be happy when syndrome, right? Happiness is not the pursuit of happiness. There is happiness in pursuit, right? Your system needs to drive towards a thing. So my first goals that I started to set out where I'm like, all right, I'm going to run 2 miles a day, or I'm going to get up at this period of time. And then I didn't. But instead of shaming myself and instead of like, oh, you are a piece of shit, and like reaffirming the old narrative, I got curious and I started to have a stronger mental environment than my trauma was trying to portray to me. I started to take control and responsibility of like, okay, I didn't get up at 5 this morning and go for my run. Why? What happened? Was there a reason for that? Right? And okay, I'm a single parent. I'm changing diapers. I'm doing these things. I'm trying to figure out all of this. I'm super broke. And I'm also trying to study for board exams. Is the excuse valid? 100%. So the emotion that comes with that, instead of shame, I'm moving it into a state of acceptance. And then I'm taking that state of acceptance and I'm going for my 2-mile run at the end of the day. I'm not sacrificing my emotional vulnerability for lack of action. I'm still holding myself accountable to it. This is the same thing that shows up when I am able to hold space and manage conversations. It's the same way that I can manage 3 companies right now. It's the same way that I can be young as a consultant in mergers and acquisitions and still go talk on Wall Street and help manage some of these large accounts, help take companies to IPO. It's because I have a level of respect that no one and nothing can take from me because I know where ground zero is for me. And I have built up from that foundation through discipline, through consistency, through early mornings, through being so broke that I'm not sure if I'm actually going to be able to get my 1 can of black beans and my 2 cans of sardines from Aldi's for $4.35, because that was what I could afford every couple days that I would have to go out and get that, because that's just where I was. So there is an aspect of me that I can create contrast without shame now. And that contrast without shame is what creates drive for me. And being able to have that, I respect myself enough that I can push the envelope of where my tolerance level is for stress. Like, yeah, things can be stressful. I can have stressful days, but anxiety is just unmanaged stress. And I know how to manage those things. I'm taking responsibility for them. So yeah, are there some days where I just need to crash out and I need to go for a walk on the beach? Is there some days where sometimes I throw the hoodie on and yeah, I'm going to watch 2 or 3 movies because my system's just taxed? 100%. And I can have those days without shame and guilt as well, because I know that my discipline at this point in my life, it's unquestionable. That is my superpower, is my ability to rest, recover, and then just, it's the breaks that are hard for me at this point, right? It's the slowing down that's the hard part for me. Now, when it comes to our ability to love ourselves, love is ephemeral. It is moving and evolving. It's like trying to chase the wind. You can spend a lot of time going to do that. And there are probably great conversations that men, women, we can have to discuss the depth of those things. In the actuality of every day, my system wants evidence more than it wants affirmation.
And
Period. Point blank.
and that's not just you. The research indicates that an experience is believed at a rate of 3 to 1 over affirmations. Even the most powerful positive affirmations, it's a 1 to 3 ratio against. So the experiences are everything. Our system doesn't care about hypotheticals. It doesn't care about would it, could it, should it. Our system cares about what has happened in the past and what can I predict in the future and what
Yeah.
is most likely to occur, and that is experiences. If you don't have the
Hypotheticals are
experiences,
fancy overthinking.
fancy overthinking. That's what our brain is built for, is fancy overthinking.
It is. It's control. Yeah.
So if you have experiences, especially repeated experiences, your brain begins to predict that those experiences will reoccur. And if you don't have experiences, your brain will predict that they won't occur, which is why it's very difficult for a couple who's fixing their behaviors and their attachment at the beginning to believe that there will ever be any moment where they have kindness, love, safety with each other. But when they simply go through 2 or 3 months of actually speaking to each other with respect, with kindness, resolving issues with new skills they've never had before, when they fall into the correct frameworks, all of a sudden after 2 to 3 months, it's a given that their partner is going to be there for them. Biochemically,
Without a
everything
doubt.
lines up.
End of the day, bed conversation is L3. What did I learn, love, let go of? You ask it, or you share it, or you ask your partner, what did you learn, love, and let go of? I do it with my daughter. I've been doing it since my daughter could speak, right? Every day we go to bed and we're going through this routine. It's not only forming that bonding and that connection, calming down the nervous system and making sure that we're there, being able to do that. And you can, I mean, I love morning routines with couples together, right? Coffee together in the morning. If you're somebody who drinks coffee, me and my partner, we drink coffee. So like in the morning time, quiet, not racing, not doing anything crazy. It's quiet and it's together and it's without phones, right? Like we are really blessed to like be able to live in an area where we watch the sunrise and sunset we have got lanais in Florida. So we got a back lanai. We can sit there and we can just be quiet with a hot cup of coffee, which as parents know, anything hot, right, is fantastic and just delightful. We had hot meals the other day. Like I can't remember the last time I burned my mouth on something, but it's that time together. It's being able to remember that we're best friends for a reason and that the stress that comes on, there's a time and a place to regulate through that.
And there's a reason to exist through the pain and push through the pain and deal with it. The cortisol is not meaningless. The stress is not meaningless. The fear is not meaningless. Yeah. These are challenges you face for a reason that you resolve with people you love, and you have outcomes that benefit the reason even more. If your pain is meaningless, that's where we begin to try to escape from the pain, either through binging and coping or the ultimate escape that some people and a lot of men do activate. That's what we have to solve is what is the purpose for my pain and how will I work with other human beings to resolve that pain and then give it some sort of greater shape. If we can do that, all of a sudden life has so much value. Even our pain has value at that point. Then we can laugh in the face of it and push
without a doubt. Yeah. And that's where I get like this morning, right? Where I'm like, son of a biscuit, that is going to be a project. That's a project. Let me tell you right now, the chances of me ever leaving my car outside with the windows down again is slim to none because I'm not a victim of the circumstance. The system's going to turn that into a learning opportunity. Now, could I bitch? Could I moan? Could I complain? I absolutely could. What I did instead is I took action. So instead of like calling up my dude and being like, oh my God, in the process of doing that, I got towels on there. I got blowers on it. The ozone generator's on the way. I got a dehumidifier that's going to clean it out, all the things. And I will not let the car be totaled because it will not be totaled. It's not even a question. It doesn't even exist, right? That's a different form. Now, on the back end of that, it doesn't happen because I'm controlling every factor that I can. I'm taking the immediate, instantaneous, and intentional action that is going to allow me to effort what I have available. Beyond that, though, I live in Florida. If mold starts to grow, stellar. We got an ozone generator. We'll clean it out. If all these other factors start to go on that are up and beyond okay, I tried. I efforted. I put the investment into it of my time to try to hedge against some of the disaster. But we're imperfect creatures as well. You're going to make mistakes.
I was even going to say, and flagging for that, next week, your system won't care. Either the car is going to be great and perfect, and your system says next week, oh yeah, cool, it's perfect. Or something goes awfully wrong with your car, and next week your system is going to, oh yeah, last week was awful. The car was doing A, B, and C. I don't really care about that. We're fine. We're moving on. Same
Without
thing.
a doubt.
Same thing with relationship aspects. Relationship what ifs. What if my boyfriend leaves me? Okay, what if? What will you do? Well, next week I will reconnect with family and friends. I will immerse in that. I will
Certainty
autopsy
and
the
predictability.
relationship. Right, the red flags I missed. I will learn how to do relationships better. I will see what I didn't understand and I will fine tune and improve. And yes, I will be lonely for a time and then I will move forward into a better relationship prospect. That's okay. What if? Let's play the what if game. So much of the time we're afraid the what if means I will die and that will be the end of everything. And that's ultimately what your system understands. So everybody out there, remember that your system doesn't understand very good cause and effect. Your system doesn't understand balance. It doesn't understand limitations. It understands catastrophes, especially if you grew up with insecure attachment. Your prefrontal cortex might have underdeveloped actually as a child if you have a more anxious attachment or disorganized style.
True.
So be aware that your system will hallucinate. It will trick you. You don't have to hate your system. It's trying to take care of you, but you do have to manage your system, and you will do that best in the best relationships. Yes?
I couldn't agree anymore. 100%. The best piece of advice that I would leave people with is just the recognition of when you're responsive and intentional versus when you're reactive. And you start to create a dialogue, an index, a journal entry, a notes reminder of in this environment, I got triggered and it reminded me of this thing. Because when you start to do that, you're not only building in self-awareness and activating those different pathways, but you are taking responsibility for it. And like recognizing where I've been a victim of something that I just haven't healed or felt or expressed has kept me away from making progress in my life, for which I'm not shaming myself. I'm just recognizing that there's so much more of me to express and more of me to have.
There should be no shame here. It should be, oh, when it's rainy, my knee makes this clicking noise. And when I'm in a relationship with someone where they don't respond very quickly, sometimes I get a little nervous. I can manage both of those things. They mean very little. I will just take care of my knee and I will take care of my emotions. It should be that detached.
Yeah, without a doubt. You can have awareness without being emotional.
Chris, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I don't get to have these conversations very often, so thank you for being you, and thank you for doing this with me. This was, I hope, as valuable for the audience as it was for me.
This is extremely valuable for me. The intentionality that you put both into your mind and this interview is extremely reflected in the 3 pages of notes that I have. So thank you very much.
I appreciate you. Where can people, I've pointed them at your Instagram 3 times, but where can people find you to learn more about you, to study what you do, and to learn how to regulate themselves a little bit differently?
Everything is Dr. Chrisley. That's my handle. That's my website. That's just about everywhere that you can find me. And soon we are going to be relaunching a podcast for which, Adam, I will come find you. We are going to do the thing. We'll fly it out to Florida and we'll figure it out.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Everybody, please check out his Instagram. The reels are phenomenal. In about 30 seconds or less, you are going to learn something you can do today to begin taking steps. They are fantastic. Everybody out there, you know me. I'm Adam Lane Smith, the attachment specialist, adamlanesmith.com. Me and my team, come check us out, and we will be there. Chris, thank you for this episode. And everybody out there, I will see you again on the next episode of I Wish You Knew.